Welcome to this workshop of the Board of Education of Anne Arundel County. Tonight, the board will hear information related to the second phase of comprehensive redistricting. Phase 2 of the redistricting process covers the Annapolis, Arundel, Broadneck, Crofton, Savannah Park, South River, and Southern clusters. Information on the redistricting timeline will be available at www.aacps.org/phase 2 redistricting, beginning at the conclusion of the workshop. While this workshop is open to the public, no public comment or testimony will be taken. Tonight's workshop is being broadcast live on AACPS TV, which can be found on Channel 96 on Comcast and Broad Stripe, and Channel 36 on Verizon. High-definition broadcast can be seen on Channel 996 on Comcast, Channel 496 on Broad Stripe, and Channel 1961 on Verizon. It is also being streamed live on AACPS's YouTube channel. So thank you for joining us. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening to everybody who's here today, board members, community members, and some of our staff members who are here to participate and present. This is probably one of the top two least enjoyable parts of my job. Between calling weather days and having a redistrict, I will tell you they both are very difficult calls to make. But I think it's important that everybody in here understand that when I came on board in 2022, one of the charges from the school board was that we needed to undertake comprehensive redistricting. Several reasons for that is the growth in this school district and the fact that we've had to build new schools, which a policy requires us to have to redistrict. But what I've also shared with people when we went through phase 1 is this is really a good problem. It's not a comfortable problem. It doesn't feel good that we have to do this, but I know a number of school districts that are having to redistrict because they're closing schools, because their enrollments are declining. We are not in that situation in Anne Arundel County. And so it does require that we have to take full advantage of the open seats that we have as we continue to grow. And today, you all will have an opportunity to hear from both Bill Heiser and Kyle Roof around the process that will be very similar to what we did in phase 1. We recognize that we have new school board members here who weren't a part of that process as voting members. We wanted to make sure that we are thoroughly taking you all through the process that we did in phase 1. And so at this point, I will pass it over to Bill for you and Kyle to take us through this presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Bedell, President Silkworth, Vice President Dent, and members of the Board of Education. For the record, I'm Chief Operating Officer Bill Heiser, and I'm joined here with Kyle Roof, the Director of Facilities. We're going to be covering 3 topics for tonight's redistricting workshop. We want to give the board and community an overview of the planning, design, and construction process, talk briefly about redistricting policy and procedures which guide our efforts, and finally wrap up with our redistricting plan and timeline. And so at this time, I'll hand it over to Kyle Roof to walk through the planning, design, and construction process.
So there are several acronyms used to describe various components in the planning and design process. I'll pause briefly so that you can all review them on the screen. So our capital planning process is guided by 3 primary documents: the long-range study, the Educational Facilities Master Plan, and the Comprehensive Maintenance Plan collectively steer our capital planning process. Each document plays a role in ensuring that our capital projects are well prioritized, our facilities are adequately prepared for future demands, and our existing infrastructure is properly maintained. The long-range study, published in 2005 and updated again in 2015, prioritizes major capital projects over 10 years. We aim to complete the next revision by this fall. This study guides long-term capital investments and aligns them with our goals. Updated annually, the Educational Facilities Master Plan, or EFMP, addresses capacity and enrollment planning. Presented yearly to the Board of Education, it analyzes enrollment trends and outlines necessary infrastructure to meet the educational demands. The Comprehensive Maintenance Plan, or CMP, also updated annually and presented to the board, details our capital renewal program. It ensures longevity and optimum performance of our assets, helping us manage resources efficiently and to maintain operational integrity. As part of the planning process, we review enrollment trends. Our county is growing, and we expect to add 5,000 students over the next decade. Enrollment was 79,000 in 2014 and is projected to reach 91,000 by 2033, an increase of 12,000 students in 20 years. AACPS has several schools with available capacity. As previously noted, the EFMP outlines annualized capacity and enrollment projections. The information presented reflects actual enrollments from September 30th, 2024, and projected enrollments as of September 30th for the school years 2028 and 2033. Available seats and utilization are key indicators reviewed before initiating a capital project or redistricting effort. As shown on the screen, there are 14,581 available seats district-wide in 2024, with a projection of 9,201 by 2033. Utilization bands determine the extent of school occupancy, categorizing schools over 110% utilization as inadequate and those below 75% as inefficient. District-wide utilizations are expected to fall within those bands by 2033. The note at the bottom of the screen is significant. Portable classrooms are not included in these numbers and provide additional capacity. Currently, there are 160 portables deployed, with 92 located at elementary schools. To put this in perspective, an elementary school classroom provides a state-rated capacity of 23 seats. The 160 portables deployed can provide up to 3,600 additional seats. Projected utilizations at schools vary throughout the county. Schools expected to exceed 100% of the state-rated capacity in 2033 are shown in red, while the green shading indicates schools that remain at or below 100%. It's important to note that this chart does not account for existing portable classrooms that provide that additional capacity previously mentioned. According to the county's 2040 plan and annual EFMPs, growth areas are primarily located in the northern and western portions of the county, where development has continued steadily. Other areas of the county have more limited development due to zoning regulations, such as those near the bay. The availability of seats and enrollment directly impact the capital improvement program. This influence includes updating the long-range study to understand revised catchment areas and school capacities. Major capital funding requests depend on enrollment at both the school under construction and those adjacent. If neighboring schools have excess capacity, funding decreases proportionally. Capital renewal schedules depend on the system age and condition. For instance, an HVAC project in a building scheduled to be replaced within 5 years would be scaled back to conserve those resources. Staffing allocations require sufficient space. Without it, adding personnel is a challenge. To expand pre-K in elementary schools, sufficient educational space is necessary. Instead of spending more capital, we can reallocate seats through redistricting. Annually updated enrollment projections based on catchment areas are affected by redistricting. We monitor annual enrollment projections to determine the need or ability to add capacity. When a building's life cycle limits expansion, especially with high projected enrollments, we collaborate with our county partners to secure future school sites or replacement sites. This process is inefficient without a clear understanding of redrawn catchment areas.
I'd like to transition now to talk about the guiding laws, regulations, and procedures that outline redistricting. Section 4109 of the Education article allows LEAs to set geographic school boundaries. In Anne Arundel County Public Schools, policy JAA and its regulation guide the redistricting process. Why do we redistrict? There are 5 main reasons to redistrict. First, enrollment patterns. We currently have over 14,000 available seats and project to have 9,000 by 2033. Second, programmatic changes driven by blueprint necessitate reallocating space within buildings. Third, balancing enrollments through redistricting helps optimize future funding. And fourth, both the state and county are less likely to fund renovations or new buildings when there are empty seats available in the district. Lastly, redistricting enhances our case for future capital funding for building additions, replacements, and alterations. Here's a quick recap on Phase 2 of the redistricting process. In June 2024, we advertised for a redistricting consultant, which the board approved in July of 2024. From July to December, the consultant developed 3 redistricting scenarios and the interactive web tool. Today, we are outlining the Phase 2 plan and timeline. Phase 1 of the comprehensive redistricting plan was implemented in August 2024, with the affected school clusters marked in blue on the left side of the screen. Phase 2 aims to better balance enrollments at schools within the Annapolis, Arundel, Broadneck, Crofton, Severna Park, South River, and Southern clusters. The recommendation is to implement Phase 2 during the 2026-2027 school year. The process for determining Phase 2 redistricting runs from February to November 2025. An interactive web tool with scenarios for community feedback will be available from February 1st to the end of April. Staff will consider feedback and make recommendations to Dr. Bedell in June, including updated enrollment projections in the 2025 EFMP. The superintendent will present his recommendations to the board in July, initiating the JAA process. The board will select options for public hearings in August and the vote on them in November. This timeline allows enough time to inform students and families and plan for a smooth implementation. 3 scenarios will be available on the web tool. Users can switch between the redistricting scenarios and compare them to current boundaries, similar that we did last time in Phase 1. The scenarios were developed and evaluated using metrics such as utilization, distance to school, you see in the center, and assignment stability. Each scenario adjusts lines to balance enrollments. The public is encouraged to visit the website and use the interactive tool to provide feedback on the scenarios. This input will be valuable in developing the superintendent's recommendations. The comment section will be live from February 1 to May 1. For more details, please visit the website shown on the screen, www.aacps.org/redistricting. As a reminder of how important this is, during Phase 1, our engagement was 33,000 unique website users, 86,000 website page views. This is for Phase 1. 15,000 unique address searches, 2,200 survey responses that we took into account and took seriously, and 461 map comments when they reviewed that tool. So once again, that will go live on February 1st, and it's important to get the community and everyone's input through that process. Next, We'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. So we are going to be going in roll call order this evening, ladies and gentlemen. So first of all, we're going to start off with Ms. McFarland.
I don't have any questions, just a comment, if that's okay. I just want to thank you for this. Redistricting is never going to be easy. There's always going to be a lot of people upset over their child moving and things like that. But I can be assured, knowing that everyone in this room cares about our kids, and that we're going to do the very best we can for them. So thank you.
Okay, Ms. Dent.
So thank you all for getting this started. It's this time again to where redistricting is at the forefront, and unlike Dr. Bedell, I don't lose any sleep at night about redistricting because I know that everybody out in the community knows that we have to redistrict. We've talked about it, and talked about it. And we've had people send us emails about overcrowded school buses, about overcrowded classrooms, about the pain that our educators go through. But I'm joking when I say I know that you understand it. In all seriousness, I know that along the lines, there are people that have legacy schools, legacy high schools. I hear Mr. Silkworth talk about, and as my very first day, he explained to me how Park Elementary was such a significant impact in his life, and how from day one to currently, how North County means so much to him as leaving us late as Saturday morning. So we know that there's going to come with that a lot of emotions that are tied to that. So we hear you and we understand you, but I ask for you all also to understand that this has to happen in order for us to create better facilities for our students, but also better working conditions for everyone, all the stakeholders, for the educators there, for the students that attend there, for the maintenance individuals that work there, so that we can do better by the people that work and live and play in our school districts. Secondly, this is a question. In comparison to redistricting, and maybe you have this information, Dr. Heiser, you or Kyle, maybe one of you all have it. In comparison to redistricting phase one, how many schools, what's the difference? I know this one says it's 41 schools, but 6 high schools. So what's the comparison?
So there's about 53 schools in the phase 2 study. Not everyone is touched in the various scenarios that are put out there. It's a relatively similar number of students. We had 45,000 in phase 1, and we have roughly 39,000 in phase 2. So a difference of a little over 6,000 students.
Okay, and the second question for this is that I know this is going to be a full year for all of 2025. We're going to be talking about redistricting. And I guess it's the software that we're using, if that's the right terminology, when we open the portal up for the comments and everything that we're using. In that scenario, is there any time that you see that there may be potential problems, like too many people trying to get onto the website at once, or any time that it may be down, any complications that you think there may come about as a result of us trying to get the information onto the website? And I ask this for 2 reasons. One, because I want to make sure everyone knows that the website is up and running, but I also want to make sure people realize that it's technology at the same time. And then if there is some technology glitches, are we going to extend that time frame?
I can speak to that. I mean, I feel confident, number one, that we'll do a really effective job at communicating out after this in terms of so that people are aware. We're aware that not everyone is watching right now, and they're going to be notified, and we want to inform as many as we can. We want this to be a transparent process. To that point, we're really excited about our new website that's out, and so we're confident that the bandwidth within that website, working with our communications office, is going to make sure that we're well prepared. And we've had several meetings already about making sure that it's up and running. Of course, if there are glitches, we're going to adjust and make sure that we fix those as quickly as possible, working with our not only communications but IT department, and go from there. We'd like to stick, though, because we're on a tight timeline, we like to stick to the February 1 to May 1 timeline to get to your specific question, but we feel confident that we'll be able to showcase that website very well.
Thank you guys for your time. I'm looking forward to not only comments, but to note is that we do take every comment seriously. Absolutely. I can tell you that from going through phase 1, we spent a lot of time, not just the board members that were going to it, but all board members took a lot of time to make sure that we read through the comments and made sure that we do our due diligence in implementing those comments into the redistricting process. So thank you.
Dr. Tobin.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. To pick up on something Ms. Dent said, it is, well, redistricting is always a difficult issue. And in the case of my own district, as I represent, within my district lies the city of Annapolis. So when you have communities that are very tight and generations in families who have gone to the same schools, it's difficult. I simply want to say that the goal here, as Dr. Bedell has laid out, is to ensure that every student has the best possible setting for school, that children are not in situations where there's terrible overcrowding, and that we are as fiscally responsible as possible and use every seat that we can. And so those are some of the considerations as we move forward. I have a couple of initial questions. With regard to the data that we're using, it is my understanding that in a recent redistricting, I believe in Montgomery County, one of the pieces of data that was included in looking at redistricting was free and reduced price meals, which I think is actually an important piece of data, which I'm not sure was part of the first phase of redistricting. And I know I've had conversations with Dr. Bedell about this. So I just wanted to ask you, Dr. Heiser and Mr. Roof, has that been figured into the scenarios that are going to be presented?
It is not figured in. One main reason, well, two main reasons. One would be we wanted to stay as consistent as possible with phase one and have the same process, same variables, which we're staying true to. Second, point you and the public to JAA policy, and that is, on page 3 of that policy, it points to the factors at which we're guided by, and it lists close to 15 factors that are listed, actually 12 factors, and so on that you'll see the variables that kind of we look at. Everything from efficient use of space to long-range enrollments to fiscal responsibility, to your Mrs. Dent's point, and walkable access to school, all the things that are in this regulation. So we wanted to stay consistent with policy.
Okay, and I understand that. I do think we had a conversation in the budget workshop. It's become very clear. I mean, I think we've always known that it's not good to have, speaking of sort of general health, to have a school that's, say, 98% farms. Blueprint has made it clear for the first time, I think it's always been the case, but I think it's become apparent in Blueprint that it's not healthy to have a school in the same district that's like 5% farms, right? That's an incredible imbalance. So that is an ongoing concern of mine. My next question is about it's my understanding that prior enrollment is generally, trends in prior enrollment are generally used for projections. Is that correct?
To a certain extent it is. We also look at large-scale developments that are happening in the area. We look at resale versus generation of students. There's a number of factors, including birth rates and other things that play a factor, and that's why we update them every year, because socioeconomic conditions change and can create many variables.
I raise this because as we pursue our strategic plan and watch the wonderful work that Dr. Bedell is doing to move our school system from good to great, the goal is to have some changes in enrollment. In other words, we have areas in Annapolis, for example, where There are no families in some neighborhoods that send their children to public school, as it now stands. I think that may well change as we continue to grow our school system the way we do. We have recently, Hillsmere Elementary is now a 5-star school. Germantown Elementary is now a 4-star school. Tyler Heights Elementary is now a 4-star school. We are steadily, certainly in the Annapolis cluster and others, we know Hilltop has just jumped 2 stars. And I would not want us to make projections assuming, and as Mr. Roof has said, there are a number of factors that go into this. But I would not want undue weight. I mean, I understand prudence. I understand what has generally been best practice to make sure that your projections are as tight as they possibly can be. But I wouldn't want to assume those kinds of past historical trajectories to be the trajectories of the future, because I think the work we're doing every day is precisely something else. And so I would just put a plea in to leave openings for those changes and make sure that we're not cutting ourselves off at the knees in some way. So.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point that you raise, and probably something that we absolutely will probably need to take a look at as we're going through the process. I think Bill made it very clear we want to be as consistent as possible, but there are some developments that have changed since we went through phase 1. And I can tell you personally from some emails that I received from a parent in the Broadneck cluster, to be exact. This parent sent an email saying because of the new curriculum, in particular the changes with the core knowledge language arts curriculum, there were several parents out in that area, Cape St. Clair, I believe, who were looking to enroll their kids into private school and made a decision because of this new curriculum, and we have a new math curriculum, a new reading curriculum at the elementary level, have made a decision to enroll their kids into the district. So I do think some of these instructional changes that were really being, I guess, developed in conjunction with phase 1 are already beginning to pay dividends. So it's something that we would absolutely have to take into consideration as we think about future interests in our school district.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Bedell. Thank you, gentlemen. I will look forward to, I'm sure we'll have more questions for you as we have time to dig into this, but I know this is a huge amount of work. I appreciate it. I appreciate the transparency of the process and the opportunities that the public has to weigh in. And I know, Dr. Bedell, in phase 1, you took a lot of what you received into account and in fact adjusted one of the scenario you presented, as I believe was your final presentation, was one of the scenarios adjusted based on what you had heard.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and it's great because that you brought that up, because I was going to mention that as we closed out today. We take every piece of input seriously in this process. And it did result in us having to make some adjustments based on the 80-something thousand comments, even to the point where on several occasions we went out into the community, engaged people in those respective communities, and then made some adjustments. And so this, there is a human element that goes in, that will be factored in, but I will say this too. Everybody can't get everything that they want. This is the reason for redistricting. There are going to be some tough decisions that have to be made, but we will take those comments into account as we do everything in our power to try to do this in a very fair and transparent manner.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Before we continue, just like to announce that our YouTube and broadcast videos are down. We do still have audio, and they're working very hard to get it fixed.
President Silkworth, we do also have a full audio and video intact that we will upload to the website tomorrow as planned.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to Ms. McDermott.
Thank you. I don't have any questions right now. I look forward to digging into the new website, and I encourage everyone in District 4 to do the same and offer your public comment. Thanks.
Ms. Parham.
Thank you so much. Going into this journey as a first timer, as a few of us are, I think now even more than the last phase, your feedback is so important. But I do want to remind you, growth is not comfortable. I also want to remind you, and I see the stoic faces, so I see you, I've heard you. I think between snow and this incident here, this new project that we're about to embark on, I've got more calls of concern, not hi, how are you doing on the board? So I hear that. But what I also want to say is we just went through a round of town halls for the budget. And we're overcrowded. Our facilities aren't where they need to be, especially in District 7. And there's a whole gambit of different concerns. This is one solution to help us get to where we need to be. One. Your feedback can make it a more comfortable process. And please, the calls are great, but also put it in the form of the tool. Because telling me doesn't share it with all my colleagues. I am a great voice, but I need your voice to go across all these different tools. Again, I just want to thank you, but I do think, and especially for our Southern high school parents who have asked me numerous times, we need a new building. This is one step to getting on that list. Be a part of the process is what I'm asking you, not be we don't want. We're going to do everything we to make it comfortable, but also the best for each and every one of you and our children. So thank you.
Thank you. So, good news, our YouTube and broadcast videos are back up and running. Thank you for our tech folks for that. I knew they would get it quickly. Okay, Ms. Shahan.
All right, first, thank you so much for the presentation. I do have a question or two. When you were talking about the seats available district-wide and the utilization and the fact that that doesn't account for the portables on site, it doesn't account for the portables, which there are many. You said 160 across. Is that countywide or just this phase, firstly?
160 is countywide.
Countywide. So do we know how many exist in currently of phase 2 of redistricting?
I'd have to get you a specific number for phase 2.
I'm sure dozens, though.
Just at Annapolis High School alone, there's quite a few. But we
Yeah.
will definitely get that data for you, but I could tell you it's a lot at Annapolis.
Yeah, I would like to know that, because I wonder, are those factors taken into account when the consultant is trying to balance enrollment? I mean, one of the points of this is so that everyone can be in the building, not in a portable, although I thought they were cool as an elementary school student. As an adult, I do not. In the building, so that they can be a full part of the community, reap all the benefits of the facilities, et cetera.
Yeah, so the SRCs, state rated capacities, are based on the building itself. So if you have 110%, that means 10% of the students aren't allocated sufficient space inside the building right now.
Okay.
So we do account for that.
Great. Other than that, at this point, I mean, unfortunately, this is not my first rodeo. Phase 1 was, how do I put this politely? Immensely better than anything we had prior to that, because Crofton and Broadneck, those were not fun at all. It was traumatic, and so the process that we employed in phase 1 was leaps and bounds better, and leaps and bounds more fair and equitable, and leaps and bounds more transparent, and provided all of the constituents far greater access to the information, to all of the information, and to be able to provide feedback. So for that, I'm extraordinarily grateful. And I know there were a few lessons learned here and there around the edges for this phase, and so I anticipate it'll be smooth. And I just asked District 5, I'm listening, and I'm watching all of this, and, obviously, my vote's not just for District 5, my vote's for the whole of Phase 2 redistricting, as are all of our votes, but my phone's already been ringing. The conspiracy theories are wild. Y'all got to stop with that right now. We're stopping with that now. We're starting with what the facts are and what is on this presentation and what it will be on the website in a couple days. So let's go from there, and let's not spread wild conspiracy theories, because it'll only make this worse for y'all, because, it's not fun anyway.
Yeah, Ms. Schellheim, thank you for bringing that up. There are no conspiracies. All we're trying to do is balance the system. It's that simple. We have a growing school district. We have to balance the system. I've done redistricting in several school districts. We've never had the kind of redistricting tool that we have. Go look in any district and see if you can find this tool that we're going to launch for Phase 2. You won't find it anywhere. So it really does offer an opportunity for us to be very transparent, to try to help prevent people from filling this void of information that they may have with their worst fears, because that's what's happening right now. And we haven't even launched anything. You haven't even seen the scenarios. I think all of that gets launched on Saturday, I believe, on the 1st. And then from there, you will have an opportunity to weigh in and to ultimately help us shape. Remember, the superintendent will make a recommendation, but then it's up to the school board to then say, okay, based on everything that we have, we either agree with this, or do we kick it back to staff based on the comments that we received from the community to then massage it a little bit more. That is ultimately the way that this process works. So what you may see may not be what it looks like when it's all said and done, once this board finishes up with their final decisions as they take action. To me, that should help eliminate any fear that there is some master plan. And as a superintendent, I don't even know what the 3 scenarios look like. I have no idea. I won't know until they are released on Saturday like everybody else. So I hope we can help ease some anxiety here.
Yeah, that's a good point. I haven't seen it either. I saw the slide like the rest of everyone else at this table with, it looks like some bits of data that were pulled out of, this references the 3 scenarios that are going live on Saturday.
Yes.
So like this, that's all I know too. I'm trying to make heads or tails with it. I can understand that green is good and red is bad, and so like I'm trying to figure that out. But I'm a visual girl. I'm going to look at it just like everyone else. I live in District 5, so I'm going to be plugging in my address, trust, under all 3 scenarios, and I want folks to trust the process, to provide, as Ms. Polim said, your feedback via the tool, via that collection site. You can email me or call me on a Sunday too, but it's going to be more effective if you put it in so we all see it, and so most importantly, so that staff can act on it, because those concerns are they, at this point, they're best seen by staff.
I will say this before I turn this light off. There will be some people who will take the comment that I said, that's not possible, that he doesn't know. He has no idea. I didn't have an idea in Phase 1 until they came out, because this process should never be about a superintendent inserting his or her power around what a particular boundary should look like. This should be based on somebody that is outside, an independent entity that is going to give us a complete objective look at what these maps can look like, and then ultimately allow for us to engage in a very authentic and transparent manner. So I just don't want people to be like, well, how is he the superintendent? He doesn't know. It's because this is the way the process has worked for us in Phase 1.
Yeah, and that goes for board members too. And then I'll stop talking after this. I can't reiterate enough how much better this entire process was than Crofton. I left the Crofton hearing in tears. It was so traumatic, and so there was a lot that was just wrong, and it wasn't happy tears neither. It was so much wrong with the way that it used to be compared to the way we do it now. So I'm really just quite impressed with how how phase one went by and large. And yes, not everyone was happy, but we have a much better balance from all of those criteria listed in the presentation. Northern part of the school system of the county than we did before, and so I assume that we're going to see us follow that trajectory for phase two. So thank you very much again, and yeah, I'll be logging in on Saturday. Thank you.
So thank you, Ms. Schalheim. Whoa, 91,033. Enrollment is absolutely going up. It's not going to be going down. So I sat on the Adequate Public Facilities Committee in Anne Arundel County for a couple of years, and it was really made very clear that we had so many empty seats. We, as a school system, have to do a better job of making sure that those seats are utilized. But as someone mentioned earlier, our goal, what is the goal? That goal is to make sure that we ensure the best possible educational opportunity for each and every one of our students, no matter what their zip code. And so here we are, January 2025, and we'll be talking redistricting up until November, so it's going to be around a while. And as Dr. Bedell and a few others said, we do not know the specifics of these scenarios. We are going to get to know the specifics of these scenarios. I did have one question, and that is, in August of 25, the board, after having gotten a recommendation from the superintendent, has the opportunity to select options. And if this board is not happy with any of the options, the board's options are then to, and I'll let you finish that.
They're enumerated in the policy, but the board can create its own if it chooses.
That was what I wanted to hear. So I just wanted to make sure that we did talk about that. I also wanted to make a comment that here we are in phase two, which is impacting Annapolis, Arundel, Broadneck, Crofton, Savannah Park, South River, and Southern. However, it needs to be made clear that decisions that are made in phase two could potentially impact phase one. Is that not correct?
Yeah, it's possible.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, let me make sure everybody hears this loud and clear. That is correct. And it is on the record. I said that when we started going through this process, that there were going to be some families that would be impacted twice, simply because we could not do all of this at one time because of the sheer stress that it would put on the system. We had to do it in phases. So that is articulated on the record over multiple redistricting phase one meetings that we had.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. So I heard the word transparency. Well, we have to be as transparent as possible about this. And I remember phase one, when that web tool was put out, the amount of input that we got from that web tool was off the charts. So I'm going to challenge everybody out there, let's at least do as well as we did during phase one, and maybe we could do better. Maybe we could double it. We need your input. So having said that, I do see a couple of lights. So what I'm going to suggest at this time, rather than have another round, I'm going to go by the lights for some additional questions. First of all, Ms. Dent.
So for the record, I just want to add that although we did not lay out all the demographics, areas that would be utilized, I know in phase one, we did talk about demographics, diversity, equity in the resources, geography as far as the proximity and the growth. I was on the planning and zoning and planning and advisory board for the county, and this county is growing. I hope 91,000 is probably where it is, but I think that might be a little bit low for the way this county is growing. So I'm thinking that, you know, I hope I don't have to ever do this again, but just in case, I want to hit on one thing, and the reason why I turned on my light is that Dr. Heiser, I just want you to get clarification from what you said. I know that there's consistency in the redistricting, but there were lessons learned from phase one. And in your best scenario, without being specific, are there specific lessons learned in phase one that we'll be applying to phase two?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I heard you correctly, and that is to say that will we learn from the lessons of phase one and apply them to phase two? And we wouldn't be great educators unless we did so.
No, there was a comment that said we wanted to be consistent, so I just got a text. So I wanted to make sure that they knew that the
100%.
lesson learned that we got in phase two will be, phase
Yeah.
one will be applied in phase two.
That's
Especially one of the concerns was low income, transportation restrictions in certain communities that are different in phase one that may apply only in the phase two area. So as I assured them is that all those things are taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Pullum.
Thank you. Okay, I do have some questions this time. And this is more of an education for me. In terms of your community school, so it's a two-part question. As we're going through this process, the community schools are a little bit more unique, I think, because they might live in one zip code, but then they're going to a community school that may be in a different area. How did you approach, so this is the first one, but how did you take into consideration the process in terms of the students going or attending the community schools? Or was that even an issue or something was that an issue that you dealt with? Did you do anything different? How did you approach that?
One thing that we were sensitive of in phase one and phase two is leaving enough room in elementary schools. That's the biggest concern that we have at the elementary school level, and that was something we were cognizant of when we were going through the various scenarios.
Okay, yeah, because as they're phasing out of the community schools and going back into the middle school, there will be an influx of students going in. So I was just wondering how that process works, because right now we're trying to level out based on certain numbers. So I wasn't sure if there was how you went about that piece of the puzzle. So I hear what you're saying. But maybe it's offline. We can get together offline on that. Then the other part, Ms. Dent, you identified that the demographics piece. Are you saying we will be provided that information as well, if that's part of phase one process, or?
We really stuck to the 12 factors that were in the policy, and demographics was not one of those factors.
Okay, all right. Last, I think, seniors and juniors. So that's also been a question that has been popping up in various conversations. If you have a senior, especially the seniors that are about to graduate that next upcoming year, how did you address that for parents who wanted their senior to stay in a school that may be moving because of the redistricting? How did you take that into account?
Similar to phase one, we didn't get into legacy students until we provided the superintendent's recommendation. This is really end phase. how it looks at the end of the transition.
Okay. And my last question, because there was so we had phase one, we recognized through phase one that there will be maybe people moving twice. Once we go through phase two, we'll get to see the overall big picture. Do we anticipate a 2.5 well, I don't mean in a negative, but to do some cleaning up if there is?
No. I mean, once we get through phase two, we would have completed redistricting for the full school district. And it's important for people to hear, we're in year one of phase one redistricting. And I think because the process went so smoothly, everybody's moving on with their business. Like we're rolling with phase one. I think as long as we do our due diligence, we take into account all of the feedback, and we operate with the transparency, I think we will be in good shape. Very similar to how we did phase one. But yeah, I would hope that the next time redistricting happens will be in 2033. I'm hoping when we're done here, that's it for a long time.
No, I'm thinking, there was just a question that I only heard twice. But while we're here, I thought I would answer it. And then it would be, maybe it's offline, just seeing how redistricting has either helped the academic outcomes from the phase one, and it would be interesting to see how that works in phase two. But that's something it's looking forward to see.
Yeah, can I just say this too? I mean, there's a lot of factors, and we will definitely take a look at what our data, you need at least 3 good years of consistent data to really make a determination if something really worked out well or not. I don't know if athletic extracurricular activities count for anything, but this fall was our first implementation of phase one redistricting. I've never worked in a district that won 11 state championships in one particular season. Now, that might be school start times, that could be redistricting, it could be the academic performance getting better as a district, but I think there's a lot of different variables that may have contributed to that. I've never experienced that in my 26 years of doing this work.
Thank you.
Michelle Hunt.
All right, I'm going to try to go fishing. So, do any of these scenarios include I mean, I know individual families could be touched, but adding additional students to any of the high schools that were previously touched?
What you'll see in some of the scenarios that in order to balance some of the areas in the western portion of the county, we had to take segments of phase two schools and move them into phase one. Now it shows in a couple scenarios. So that would essentially take phase two students and move them into a high school from phase one.
Okay, and is that the only part of the county that we're seeing that?
In the 3 scenarios that are shown, again, these are not final scenarios, but that's what I can tell you.
Final meaning what we ended up passing in November. Yeah,
Right.
no, I know that, I know. But as of this moment, since you've seen them, you put together the presentation. So I'm assuming you've seen so the only part where we're adding students to a school that has a high school feeder that has already been touched in phase one is on the western side of the county.
I believe so.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Dr. Tobin.
Thank you. Just a couple of my colleagues' comments made me want to add an additional comment of my own. And particularly Ms. Pulliam's question about a possible 2.5 or whatever, which none of us want to do, but I think for the public, this is part of the concern, right? We want to get this as right as we can get it with regard to, as has been noted, space in the elementary schools, because we know what's, look at the projections that have been presented tonight. Elementary is a place where there's going to be a lot of growth in particular. Because we don't want to have to upend the community any more often than we need to. And so there are reasons that at times we're going to look at possibilities and possibly decide on them that give us the maximum amount of space to continue to maneuver so that we don't have to turn around and do another redistricting in a couple of years. That is the hope. We know there are portions of the county that are growing very fast, and development is taken into account with that. But just one additional question that I've received, and I meant to ask earlier, along those lines, I'm assuming, obviously, but for the public, that our offices are working with City of Annapolis Planning, County, so that we know what's rolling forward down the line in terms of possible development, all of those things. That is all being figured into the information that we're getting. Is that correct?
100%. We have a planning department that solely focuses on those things and making sure that we're collaborating with other experts in the county and Annapolis City.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no more lights, I'd like to thank Dr. Heiser, Mr. Roof, and the entire staff that is working on this. So this is where we are. We're in the process now of phase 2. And once again, I mentioned earlier, what do we want? We need involvement and input from all of our stakeholders. That's critical. And we want the process to be transparent, and it will be. And finally, at the end, we need to make sure that we've fulfilled the goal that we have to ensure the best possible educational opportunity for all of our students, no matter what their zip code. So an awful lot of human effort was placed in phase 1, and as Dr. Bedell said, I think it did go rather smoothly. The hope is that phase 2 will go as smoothly. We know that a tremendous amount of human effort is going to be put into this, and we're all going to do our very best to accomplish that goal. Dr. Bedell, any ending comments?
Yeah, no, just thank you for your questions today. Thank you to the two of you for your presentation, and those of you who traveled out here tonight, thank you for coming. We look forward to hearing from you all.
Okay, so that will conclude our workshop this evening. Would like to mention to the public that this Board of Ed will meet. Their next meeting will be on February the 5th. That'll be a day meeting. Our closed session will start at 10 o'clock in the morning and the open session at 12. Thank you so much for being with us. Please stay safe. Good night.